Hi, Pete. How are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Laurel?
I'm doing really well, thank you. So I thought today we might talk a little bit about the idea of how your relationship with money and your financial life really reflects an inner relationship, a relationship that you have with yourself. And I know when we've talked about this before, you and I, there are a couple points that you brought up that I thought were really powerful to share with other people.
Yeah, and the 2 points are really about how you feel about yourself shows up in money through your confidence and your sense of worth. In particular, do you get your worth through money or through who you believe you are from the inside out?
Hmm.
Where do you use money to kind of show people who you are by the type of house you have, or do you use money to accent who you are? Well, I'm worthy enough, and it doesn't matter what kind of house I live in, or car I ride in.
Yeah, I know when I'm when I'm talking to people and we get on the topic of money, I feel like part of what I share, and I'm sure that this is really such a big thing in your world, is the idea that we're such an economically based culture. Like the way that we think has become so economically based in so many ways that even just like the term worth, we think net worth before we think worthiness inside.
Exactly. And
Mm,
even though we have been changing, we're saying these days that money isn't as important, and
mm.
we know that our self-worth is more important than our net worth. It's
Yeah,
very interesting over the last few years what people actually put out to the universe when they feel a loss of money because it represents more of a loss of self. They may
yeah,
be saying one thing where money isn't important when times are going well, but when times are a little bit rocky, then we
mm,
see in our relationship with money, do we try to hold on to it? Do we fear the loss of it? And
yeah,
that's when we really find out about what we really believe in.
yeah, yeah. Well, because fear is fear and the fear of not having enough money get hits us at our survival place, right?
Yeah, because if we don't believe we're good enough to overcome a loss of money, we're always going to fear if we're going to have enough. What
Mm,
happens if I have to go on food stamps? What happens if I need to go to the unemployment line? It's not the actual actions of going into the unemployment line and filling out forms and getting a check. It's the shame that we feel because we don't feel good enough about ourselves. So when we go into the unemployment line, our inner shame from the lack of worth really comes up and bubbles up inside of us.
mm. So, how do you recommend people, begin to work with that when you're working with them around the issue of fear and yet not having enough?
Well, there's a couple of things. First, it's just noticing it.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like I said, when times are going well, we could say, well, money isn't important. I feel really good about myself. But we really find out about ourselves when things are a little bit rocky like it is today. And the first thing to notice is to notice that fear and then
Mm,
say, where is that fear coming from?
yeah.
Is it about that I need to feel like a good provider for my children? Thus, when I don't feel I could send them to college, I don't feel good enough. And if
Mm,
it's with that part of it, then I look at, well, how are you a good parent? And what do you really want to give your children?
yeah,
So it
yeah.
seems you gotta see where it originates from. Other people are there. It's like, well, I don't want to be, impoverished while I'm retired.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Well, then we can look at ways to show that you can work through retirement. That it isn't about you have to stop at 65 and live out 30 years till you're 95 and always constantly fear the loss of money. You could say, well, I could become a Walmart greeter. Well,
Mm,
right there it brings up some people's shame. Well, I'm too good to be a Walmart greeter. That's not the point. If you feel good about who you are, it doesn't matter what you're doing. And those are the kind of things we look at. But you
yeah,
have to go down to what is causing that fear to see where it brings up the lack of confidence or the lack of real self-worth.
yeah, yeah. So in terms of working with confidence, and when you get to that point with clients, and you're talking about the idea of feeling more confident, so you don't feel as much fear. What are some steps that people can take? Like where? So you begin to feel the feeling. That would be the first step, and start to look for the source of where that comes from. Next is confidence building. Yes? No?
Well, people say confidence building, and when I think of that, it's like you're trying to say that I am good enough, I am worthy enough, and things like that. But part of it is actually doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Feel your, the saying, feel your fear and do it anyways.
Yeah, yeah.
So it all depends on the situation. But if for example, a lot of people these days don't want to really look at retirement because of the fear there. Well, will I have enough in retirement? Well, what I do is kind of show them this is the retirement planning software that's out there that anyone can use. Go ahead and do it. Your first step to overcoming the fear is planning, getting as much information that you can about the situation.
Right.
And then you play a lot of what-if games. Well, if I want to retire at 65, but there's a 50-50 chance I may run out of money. Well, what happens if you work till 67 or 69? And just them, getting a new reality. Well, there are options I have when I face these obstacles. They build confidence because it's just not one path only, and if I don't make that path, I fail. It is, I have all these different options. There's 3 or 4 or 10 things I can do when the time comes when I hit this obstacle, and that kind of builds confidence. Well, it's just not 1 in a million shot.
Yeah.
Well, whatever happens, there's going to be a way for me to figure out how to do it. And by doing the financial planning part of it, I see that I can do it.
Yeah, yeah. And that's interesting that talking about what can you do concretely, what can we actually do? Because I know when I'm working with people, again, it's at the end of the day, how do you feel good about yourself? You feel good about yourself because you acted in ways during the day that make you feel good, that you're like a person of integrity, right? So one of the things that I want to talk about or have you share a little bit about is the idea of, in terms of confidence building, is looking at day-to-day habits about what you're doing with your money. Because don't you think that if people are in a place where they've overspent or overextended credit or taken a mortgage on that's too big, based on their salary or their life, then they're almost in a loop of undermining confidence day in and day out?
Exactly. And as you were saying, how do you build confidence? I was starting to think it's not about building confidence, but finding ways that you sabotage who you are, your confidence, by taking out, as you said, overextending yourself. And the key thing to remember is if you chose to overextend yourself, maybe it was unconsciously or consciously, you can choose again today.
Yes. Yes.
And so that's the whole part of when I talk about budget, is a lot of people say, I have no options because I took it on a mortgage that's greater than I can afford, or I bought that third car that I didn't really need. Now I got that payment, and that's between the house and your car and taxes. That's about 2/3 of your budget. That leaves little room for anything else. But if you made that choice to get into the situation, you also have the choice of how to get out of it.
Yeah.
And that's where I come in of, okay, there's one way of just sell everything, but there's other options out there. And the confidence is saying, well, I have 5 or 10 options. Now, which one do I want to choose? And then you see your real power.
Yes.
And that's where confidence comes from.
Yeah, I agree. We feel confident, I think, when we are in a situation and we feel powerful, and not powerful like I have the biggest paycheck, but powerful like inside, I know that I can make good decisions for me.
Yes, and the key point here, as we talked about last time with the budget, is what do you really want for yourself?
Yeah.
Love, happiness, joy, peace. And when you look at what you really want and you see you have 10 or 20 options to get that in every single moment, you see that no matter what happens outside, like with this economy, may have taken a couple options away. Maybe you can't afford that luxury car anymore. Maybe you can't afford to upscale to the next house size that you were always dreaming about. But you still have the choice to be happy, peaceful, joyful no matter what situation you're in. And when you're saying that I am worth it to have peace, love, joy, and happiness, the other thing you're doing is saying that I'm already worthy. I don't need to show off to my neighbor that I can afford a bigger house, a bigger car, for them to see me as worthy.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a switch of external measurements of worth to an internal measurement of worth. And if I feel worthy enough, nothing else matters.
Right.
All that matters is what I believe I need to be happy.
If you were told from the very beginning, you are worthy just as you are, you don't have to prove anything to anybody, you don't have to be anything other than who you are, you're great you're worthy of love and joy every single day just by being you in this world. It's kind of like reprogramming yourself almost for that, isn't it? If you didn't get it from the beginning, if that wasn't the message that you got, that you're kind of like bringing that back to yourself. You condition yourself with that message.
Yeah, we chose to condition ourselves with that message, and it's the message that is out in the society. Starting in high school, are you good enough to get into college? And once you're in college, are you good enough to get that good, next job and that paycheck?
Yeah.
And then even then are you good enough to become a manager? And we're always striving for the next thing for us to be happy versus saying, well, I can be happy right now because I feel worthy enough. I feel that I don't need to prove it to somebody else. And I think the hard part is, how do you do that? And one thing I do is I ask people, it's kind of like a hamster on a wheel. We keep on doing it, but how do we choose to get off of it?
Yeah.
And the first choice is I ask people, what in high school or college did you think you need to be happy? And they would say, well, maybe it was this or that, maybe it's, a car and a couple $1,000s. And then I go, now today, what do you think you need to be happy?
Yeah.
And they start seeing that it's kept on increasing.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, now when is it going to be enough?
Yeah. Wow, that's a really powerful exercise. I love that. I'll borrow that sometime.
No problem.
Yeah. No, that's just great because it's true. It's like, when was the beginning of where you thought you needed some sort of financial, material thing, right, to feel okay in the world? And how has it just kind of escalated?
Yeah.
Unaware since then.
Because when we try to measure our worth by a physical measurement, we're always going to find somebody or a group of people that have more that will make us feel less than. So
this is I guess what we're asking people, or what we're suggesting to people, you and I, is saying there's a big paradigm shift, As you look through your money lens, let it be an indicator about, what are you really feeling inside, and how are you just, allowing that part of your life to enhance your life experience or teach you or help you grow versus looking for it as a security blanket, so to speak.
Yeah, because I use the phrase that for money, it's kind of like, what you see, how you use money is like a canary in the coal mines. If you start seeing, signs of financial stress, or the canary having stress about how, going down deeper and deeper in the coal mine, something is going on. And you can usually figure that out easier when you're looking at numbers than you could say looking within and how do I feel about myself.
Yeah.
Because you could say, well, I'm overspending, so does that mean that I'm not really feeling okay as I am? That I'm trying to get something else to make myself feel better?
Yeah.
And that's an easier thing to start to look at and then go deeper to what's going on within.
Nice. That's great. So I'd like to come back and talk a little bit more about, I think we kind of just opened the door a little bit on the idea of, money equaling security, money equaling happiness, and we know that those things don't really fit. So let's come back and talk about that a little bit. Would that be okay?
Sounds good.
Good. Great. Thanks, Pete.